Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm sure you figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Welcome in. Season's greetings. Hey, we did it. I mean, technically, we did this a while ago. I didn't actually figure it out until this morning. It is episode 200 of the Russ Joy Show. Good God, 200 episodes. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Russ, it seems like a lot. It seems like a lot of episodes. And in fact, it is a lot of episodes. But then I did a little bit of homework. I did a little bit of like mental math. And then I did a little bit of checking the podcast feed and the YouTube channel. This is apparently episode 209. I think I've done 209. I think there were like 9 episodes that I've done in reaction to like Phillies playoff games. I think in reaction to at least one Eagles playoff game at some point. I think there's been a couple of emergency podcasts kind of thrown in there as well. But of the actual Monday, Wednesday, Friday show, which I think we moved to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some point in 2025, I think. This is the official 200th episode. So welcome in. Thanks for being here. There's a lot to get to. We're doing the show in the morning instead of the afternoon because I figured we're 200 episodes in. Like, I should be better at a lot of things, right? Should be better about like when we actually go live, having a set schedule, normal expectations, just simple things. And instead I decided we're going to do the show in the middle of the morning, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. Now, I see there are people in the comments section right now who are talking about Canada. Nick Abe says, Canadian game's coming up. Landra says 5 minutes until the Canada game. You just mute the TV and you spend time with yours truly. This is the beauty of things, guys. Beauty of things. Oh, and by the way, it's Ash Wednesday. Chris Freed asks, where are your ashes, Russ? What a great question. I went to a 7 a.m. mass today. Good Catholic boy with the family. And this will be news to a lot of you, right? So usually get your ashes on your forehead. Well, the church that I went to today, the priest was like, well, there's actually a thing that they do. It's an ancient Roman tradition where they do the ashes on top of your head. And then I started looking into it because I got into this back and forth with some family about like, I've never heard of that before. And believe it or not, in Italy, it seems like they've just been doing this forever. In Italy, they don't do the ashes on the forehead. They do it on the head. Now I can get into the whole theological discussion about it. But the whole idea, I guess, is that it's more of it's between you and God kind of thing, instead of it being like, apparently the ashes on the forehead is a U.S. thing. And that's kind of like, you embrace that, and that's a thing that you don't exactly like throw out to the world. And in America, surprise, surprise, we tend to go, boom, right on the forehead. Anyway, the ashes are up here. They have not been showered out. And they're going to remain there until I end up at the gym at some point today. When I get back, I'm certainly going to take a shower and hopefully, well, we'll see. Maybe some of the ash will remain behind. We'll find out. So there you go. Landro says, been Catholic all my life, never heard of it. Go ahead and look it up. I promise you it is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. I learned it today. That's part of the beauty of learning things early in the day. Now, DS7913 says, I like my Philly sports misery in the morning. Misery is what I shoot to bring to you. Not really. I tend to try to bring a little bit of fair and balanced takes on Philadelphia sports. That is the spirit of the show. As I think I set up on this thing like, when did we start doing the shows? 2024? I guess it was 2024, like summer, fall of 2024, about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. I said the whole goal of the show was to dissect Philadelphia sports and the media that covered them. And I think to this point, we've done a pretty fair job. I do. We're 17 subscribers away over on YouTube from 2,000. Would be swell to get to 2,000 today. I think that'd be like a nice little celebration as well. But we got a lot going on. Most notably in town. Well, here's your little rundown if you haven't looked at the description of the episode. 1, you've got Dave Dombrowski versus Bryce Harper, which we will talk about because I've seen so many bad takes on this. I'm not surprised, I guess, but I've seen so many bad takes about it. And we didn't do a show on Monday for President's Day, and then I was like, I'm not going to do one on Tuesday because then Tuesday, Wednesday, back-to-back. No. So we got Dave Dombrowski versus Bryce Harper. We got to talk about Matvei Michkov, who went on a Dominican trip and drove some people nuts, apparently, that he didn't like legitimately chain himself to Skate Zone in Voorhees. So we'll get to that in a little bit. He was, I believe, the first one on the ice once they reopen the building to players. So we'll get to that in a little bit as well. And VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, it feels like an eternity ago, but they had a really successful All-Star weekend, so we'll get to that at some point in the show as well. And I don't know if there's anything else of note that we need to have a conversation about. We can. I can tell you that like one thing that maybe we'll get to today, or it'll be a Friday thing, Cam Jurgens going down to Medellin and getting like all kinds of like stem cell treatments and like the blood transfusion, the blood oxygenation thing. We might talk about that as well at some point. I don't know. That might be a Friday topic, but I got to tell you, some of that stuff, I was like, oh boy. Okay. Well, hopefully we're okay. We could have a conversation about this too. I mean, Nick Abbey says A.J. Brown is staying. I would expect him to stay. I'd be really surprised if he's moved. Okay. Let's have a conversation. Okay. Let's have a conversation about what's going on with Dave Dombrowski and what's going on with Bryce Harper. Now, I want to be really clear. Sometimes they get a little bit hyperbolic on the show, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just tell you flat out somebody's acting like a weenie. And, I hate to say it, and if you are a pure, full-on Bryce Harper can do no wrong truther, you're not going to like what I have to say. Bryce Harper's being a whiny bitch right now about Dave Dombrowski. All right, so we're going to level set here. Dave Dombrowski, at the end of last season, we dissected it at the time. Dombrowski came out and made a comment about Bryce Harper didn't have an elite season. And that was it. Like it wasn't anything crazy. But Dave Dombrowski comes out and says, in essence, Bryce Harper didn't have an elite season. Can he get back to being an elite player? We will see. We'll find out. It didn't go over well. Now, I have had a lot of negative things to say about Dave Dombrowski and his tenure as president of the Phillies. And I have not been very sold on the job that he's done. Yes, there have been big money signings. There have been big moves. Of course. Sure. But I got to tell you, the building, the construction of the team the last couple of years has been suboptimal at best. And when you look and you see how things are going now, I will once again point to there are legitimate issues with the way that this Phillies roster is constructed. Like, well, we could always break this off as a side conversation, but like, I saw a quote the other day that Alec Boehm is going to be the cleanup hitter. That's what they're looking at right now. You're going to have Alec Boehm hitting cleanup. Alec Boehm, who this organization reportedly was very open to moving, was actively looking for a new home for Alec Boehm, and now he's going to be hitting cleanup. Alec Boehm, who doesn't hit for power, has a prototypical, I would argue, frame for being a good power hitter. Not a power hitter at all. Was in the Home Run Derby a couple of years ago. Had an exceptional first half of the 2024 season, but doesn't really hit for power. Okay. And I believe as Rob Thompson said, well, he puts the ball in play. Well, a lot of times, Alec Boehm gets up there with runners in scoring position, and the place that the ball goes in play is into the infield for a double play. But fine, cool. So we're apparently in the midst of everything going on with this team. Rob Thompson doesn't like hearing it's running it back because we're turning over 18% of our roster, and I don't think it's really fair to say that we're running it back. And then you get Dave Dombrowski. Well, we turned over a lot of the roster. No, you didn't. You turned over parts that don't matter, but the core of this team remains intact. The entire infield remains intact. They finally got off of Nick Castellanos, but they didn't get jack shit for it. They did get like a $780,000 savings because San Diego's paying Castellanos the MLB veterans minimum. So, okay, cool. You're not paying a full $20 million to Nick Castellanos to not play for your team. You're only paying, $19.2 million or whatever it is. Good job, everybody. Feel good. Pat yourselves on the back. So that's its own kind of mess. But Harper is the guy that is going to make this thing work or not, right? We can all think about Kyle Schwarber being the big money re-signing in this offseason. And there's truth that Kyle Schwarber is going to be expected to be at or near the same MVP candidate level that he was a year ago. Now, is that fair? No, I don't actually think it is. I don't see Kyle Schwarber replicating the power numbers that he did last year. I don't see him replicating the production that he did a year ago. But if you can get 85, 90% of that production out of Kyle Schwarber, I think we could still look at that signing and say, okay, it made sense. It's okay. JT Realmuto getting brought back. maybe you hurt his feelings, right? It sounded like they were ready to move on from JT Realmuto. There was even the reporting that when the Phillies thought they were getting Bo Bichette, they'd essentially told Realmuto's agent, like, thanks for the good times, thanks for the memories, but time to move on. Realmuto's back. What should we expect of him? I have no idea. Do we see a massive step forward for Bryson Stott or a Brandon Marsh coming? I would say no. Do we expect Adolis Garcia to somehow become light years better at the plate than Nick Castellanos? No, I think the production will roughly be the same. Maybe Garcia hits for more power. I think that's probably fair to say. Hits some more home runs at Citizens Bank Park. Is he going to hit 30, 35? I can't imagine so, though the man is yoked. If you saw the pictures of him when he reported to Phillies camp, I mean, Garcia's bicep is like the size of my thigh, and I'm not exactly the skinniest guy right now, so, there's some old soccer meat in that upper leg, but like gigantic biceps. Do I want to imagine Garcia could be good? Sure. Do I want to imagine that Justin Crawford's going to be good? Yes. Do I know for certain he will be? No. Right? So you look at the roster construction right now and you go, this team doesn't look inherently better than last year. We dissected this last week. I bring all that up because I think context matters. One of the things that we have heard and one of the things that we have seen across the board with Bryce Harper, he did like a 15 or 18 minute media availability when he got to camp, when he reported to Clearwater. And he praised the Dodgers for the moves that the Dodgers made. And that the Dodgers, they go out and they make big signings. But they also do an exceptional job of drafting. And that allows them to either bring up prospects or to use those prospects to go out and take big swings on the trade market. And it's interesting because if you pay attention to that, I think that there are two reasons that he's doing it. One, I think he does actually admire what the Dodgers are doing, and who couldn't? If you're a player, you want to play for an organization that's going to spend insane amounts of money, copious amounts of money, not be afraid to trade prospects if there's a big swing, go all in at any given moment. You want that as a player. Also, Harper is cognizant of the fact he's looked to as a leader and one of the faces of Major League Baseball, and there is a collective bargaining agreement coming up at the end of this year, and there's probably going to be a lockout in 2027. So we've now heard guys like Harper and certainly Aaron Judge up in New York praising what the Dodgers are doing. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that you're going to see a unified front by the players talking about how what the Dodgers are doing is actually good for baseball, spending money is good for baseball, all that. But Harper has taken like a different tone since he's been back. Harper has taken a tone that is more scorned lover than somebody who's using Dave Dombrowski's comments from the end of the season as fuel. He actually went on to a podcast. We'll get there a little bit later on as well. He went on a podcast and essentially said that this kind of stuff doesn't serve as motivation for him. I tend to think that he's not telling the full truth there, because one thing that I can tell you, and we're going to dissect some of what he had to say over the past week, this sounds like a guy who is in camp with a mission. He's a man on a mission to regain his MVP form, if for no other reason than to shove it to his president of the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I want to first start off with Harper on, was it Sunday? I think it was Sunday. Here's Bryce Harper when asked about the Dave Dombrowski comments, because again, we all kind of knew that there was a non-zero chance he was going to take offense to what Dombrowski had to say about not being elite. And we're going to break this down because I think we have to have a conversation about whether or not those comments were fair and whether or not Bryce Harper's reaction to them was fair. Let's go out to Bryce Harper. This is Harper on Sunday down at Phillies camp when asked about Dave Dombrowski's comments about him not having an elite season.
I know you talked once since Dave made those comments in October, and then you wore that not elite T-shirt taking BP one day. How much of a motivator is that to you, or has that been to you this off season?
Not really. I mean, I don't get motivated by that kind of stuff. For me, it was kind of wild, the whole situation of that happening.
It was kind of wild. So to recap, he showed up, he took BP in a shirt that said not elite. That's not exactly a letting it go under the radar. That very clearly is a bold, nonverbal statement to the president of the team. Very clearly. So you can't play coy there. It clearly pissed him off. Okay. And then he says it's wild. All right, we're going to get into this in a little bit, and then we'll decide if wild is the appropriate adjective to describe how Bryce Harper really feels about Dave Dombrowski's comments.
I think the big thing for me was, when we first met with this organization, it was, hey, we're always going to keep things in-house, and we expect you to do the same thing. And so
we're going to keep things in-house. I want to come back to that in a second because I think this is where he wildly misses the mark.
When that didn't happen, kind of took me for a run a little bit. So I don't know. It's part of it, I guess. It's kind of a wild situation.
Wild again.
That even happening. Obviously, I didn't have the year that I wanted. Obviously, I didn't have the postseason I wanted.
So he acknowledges he didn't have the season he wanted or the postseason he wanted. But if somebody else points that out, it's quote unquote wild. Okay.
Numbers weren't where they needed to be. I know that, and I don't need to be motivated to be great, in my career or anything else. So that's just not a motivating factor for me.
Au contraire, mon ami. Let's be fair, okay? Because we try to be fair on the show. He's full of shit. This clearly bothered him. Now, does he need extrinsic motivation? I don't know. I have to imagine that Bryce Harper is and has always been a pretty self-motivated guy. I don't think this is like run-of-the-mill stuff. I do think that Bryce Harper's feelings were hurt. Do I think that Bryce Harper should have been over this by now? Do I think that by the time he got to camp, he should have certainly gotten to a point mentally where he no longer has to harp on this? Yeah, I do. Do I think it's actually slightly concerning that he's still fucking talking about it? I do. And I want to be clear about something. When Bryce Harper said, well, when I signed here, we agreed to keep things in-house. The president of the team saying that the highest paid player on the team, the face of the franchise, didn't have an elite season, has been an elite player, had a good season, but not an elite season, and we'll see if he gets back to being elite. That's not keep things in-house. No. Keeping things in-house would be, I don't know, Rick Tocchet constantly bringing up Matvei Michkov coming to camp out of shape. Maybe keep that in-house. Saying sometimes people, hint, hint, are late for treatments or that dieting matters. Hint, hint. That's something you keep in-house. Saying, hey, our star player, the guy that we really do rely on, the engine of the team, didn't have an elite season. That's not something that you're trying to keep in-house. That is a fair critique. And if Harper can then turn around and say, well, I didn't have the regular season, I didn't have the postseason that I wanted, you're saying the same thing. Dombrowski has said a lot of dumb shit. I have torn him to shreds for saying a lot of dumb shit and losing the PR battle many times over and talking out of both sides of his mouth and saying things about this team being really good. We really like our team. We don't feel like we need to really add. We really like this team. I have shredded him, but I did not shred him over the elite comments because he was correct. Harper did not have an elite season in 2025. He did not have an elite postseason in 2025. I could argue he had, by his standards, a subpar postseason, a subpar regular season. It was a good season for a major league player, even a star major league player, but it's not the MVP caliber Bryce Harper that this team needs in order to get to the next level, to even potentially put more of a scare in, or dare I say, upset the Los Angeles Dodgers in the playoffs. He didn't have that. So Dave Dombrowski is fully within his right to say this player didn't have an elite season. He had a good season. We'll see if he can be elite again. Nothing about it was unfair. Harper's still talking about it. Took BP in a shirt that said not elite. This is like passive aggressive to the max. This is a scorned lover going on to AOL Instant Messenger and putting up lyrics to an emo song as their away message. This is like in the early days of Facebook when you change your relationship status. That's what this is. And Bryce Harper is a grown-ass adult, an MVP in this sport, a face of the franchise, a father. Dude, you've let it go. Let it go. This, wash your hands of the not elite comment. Don't talk to the media about how it doesn't motivate you. It clearly did. You might already be intrinsically motivated to be a great player, and that's awesome. You should be. And to be fair, Bryce Harper over the last decade has been one of the very best, most elite players in all of Major League Baseball. And yet, he's still harboring these comments as if they were an affront to him as a human being, as if Dave Dombrowski came out and pulled like a Stephen A. Smith talking to LeBron James as a father. No, this isn't like Dave Dombrowski airing out grievances or issues about, the report Nick Castellanos having his kid take BP while JT Realmuto off the side. No. This is just commenting on the season that Bryce Harper had, and it was not an elite season. It would be theoretically elite for a lot of players in Major League Baseball, but relative to expectations, it was not for Bryce Harper. It's not unfair. It's not. It might be the only accurate thing Dave Dombrowski said in like the last 18 months. And you might say to yourself, well, Russ, it was the first time that Harper spoke to the media since coming back to camp. He's just trying to clear the air. And now he's going to move on. Except that's not it. It would be great if that were all. It'd be great if Bryce Harper said this on Sunday and then proceeded to shut the fuck up. That would be great. Except that's not what happened. Because then a clip starts going around on Tuesday where Harper was on the show Bussin' with the Boys, a nationally tuned into show, a show with a large listenership, viewership, featured on all kinds of, you listen to podcasts, even if you listen to this one in the podcast feed, you might occasionally get an ad for FanDuel. You'll hear it, Bussin' with the Boys. Well, here's Bryce Harper. Now, I don't know when this was recorded. Was this recorded on Tuesday? Was it recorded on Sunday, Saturday, Monday? But he's got the Olympic hat on. I tend to think that this wasn't like 2 months ago. Here's Bryce Harper talking to Bussin' with the Boys about Dave Dombrowski's comments.
Again, like if he had something like that to say, like obviously I'd want him to say it to me.
I assume he has your phone number?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that'd probably be a good way to go about it.
I think the tough part is like it's just a story that doesn't need to be out there. So like when we get to spring training, it's gonna be a story.
It's not a fucking story. It's not a story. What part of this is a story? It shouldn't be a story. It was a story in the fall when the president of the team said Bryce Harper didn't have an elite season. It was a story in the fall. And if you were upset with the comments, you could have had a conversation over the last 3-4 months. And it sounds like they had one, but it clearly didn't work. I thought this conversation was dead months ago. Bryce Harper showed up with a shirt that said not elite. Bryce Harper spoke to the media on Sunday and aired his grievances again. Okay.
Like people are going to talk to me about it. People are going to ask me about it. It's just like, it doesn't need to be a story. Like
That was my boot. But
nice, dude.
I do like a good rip. I do like a good rip.
But like, I think that's the thing. Like you don't want stories like that in spring. Like you don't want that to be right.
What were the comments said? The comments from Dave Dombrowski were from the fall. We're in the spring. Spring training's about to start. Who brought it up? Who brought it back to the forefront of the conversation? Who did that? Bryce Harper did. Okay.
When you get there, like, hey, what do you think? Like, great. This is what I have to answer. Besides,
everyone's got their opinion on.
The only way this makes sense, the only way what Bryce Harper is saying makes sense is if he literally got done playing in the fall and then, like an ostrich, shoved his head into the sand. That's it. Or he went, drank raw milk, did the red light, UV treatment or whatever, got the blood transfusion, did the oxygenated plasma or whatever, and literally did nothing where he consumed any sort of media around Major League Baseball, didn't get any texts from friends, just went totally off grid, went dark. That is literally the only way for him to truly believe that this is now Dave Dombrowski's fault that was brought into the start of this season.
Yeah, exactly.
Where were you when this took place? I assume you just found out like everybody else. Or somebody might have sent you a link.
Where did I see this?
He knows. He saw it right away.
I don't know. I can't even remember. I was just shocked. More than anything, I was just like, that's kind of wild. It's a wild take.
There we go. Wild again. It's not a wild take. It was an accurate take.
Have you...
Obviously, I didn't have the greatest postseason or like the year that I wanted to have. True. But if they want to talk about like, what stats mean or anything else.
I don't know who they is or they are, but okay.
It's like they have their numbers, like they know where I'm at, like number wise for, the tier of the league and stuff like that. Like it's still there, So.
Yeah. Damn. Was there any beef with you guys like throughout the season to where it could have led them saying that?
No, I think that's the thing.
Okay, so there was no tension throughout the season. Okay.
Like I have a good relationship with, Dave, so it was just like kind of weird, for him to even.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
Speak
you
that
were
way,
just shocked.
you know.
So we got wild and we've got weird.
So I was just shocked.
The
Yeah, it
third
makes
W?
you wonder like what would go through his mind that he's like, yeah, this is the appropriate time to bring up a comment like this.
Yeah.
It was the end of the season. I can't believe I can't believe that I'm taking Dave Dombrowski's side. How far have we fallen as a society that I am actively defending Dave Dombrowski, who's built a suboptimal team to try to take on the Dodgers again? How am I defending Dave Dombrowski? Because it's the only right take to have.
I mean, again, like obviously we didn't have the postseason we wanted to. We got beat. It didn't end the way we wanted to. And I know all those things. Like, and if you want to blame somebody, I don't mind you blaming me. Like I didn't play well. Like I didn't have my best series. And I'm totally fine taking the blame for anything that happens. Like it comes with, the territory and things like that.
Okay.
But things like that just don't motivate me to the extent like, I know I need to be better.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I get
Exactly.
that. Like I need to have a great year this year and I plan to do that. Like I don't plan to not have a great year.
I like Bryce Harper. I have enjoyed watching Bryce Harper play baseball. Okay. This has to stop. It has to stop. It has to. This is nuts. I just want everybody to kind of go, like, zoom out real quick. Macro view this with me really quick, okay? People like me who assess the job that Dave Dombrowski did coming out of the offseason, right? People like me said this team is objectively worse than it was a season ago. This team is definitely not better than it was at the start of last season. Despite what Dave Dombrowski had to say, despite what Rob Thompson had to say. This team is decidedly not better than the team a season ago. Okay, fine. As camp approached, as pitchers and catchers reporting approached, what was the one thing this Phillies team had to do? They had to just go into the season without any drama. What was the first thing that happened? Nick Castellanos was still here. They somehow didn't find a suitor for Nick Castellanos, nor did they read the market appropriately to realize they weren't going to get jack diddly squat for Nick Castellanos. So that drama from 2025 leaked into the calendar year 2026, and not just into the calendar year, but legitimately was the lead storyline as pitchers and catchers reported. Then Bryce Harper shows up and goes on this hurt feelings tour. So now you've had two stories around your team. They've both been negative. They're both, to some extent, unforced errors. The Phillies organization screwed up by not moving Castellanos at any point or cutting him at any point earlier than they did. This Harper thing is 100%. I mean, somebody can try to give me pushback here in the comments, but this is an entirely Bryce Harper made problem now. Dombrowski, if you want to say, erred in what he said in the fall, well, then he stepped in shit months ago. As an organization, as a team, and especially as a team leader, as Bryce Harper is expected to be, you had 4 months or so to iron this one out, to get any hurt feelings out of the way. You want to go out and publicly vent about being hurt by Dave Dombrowski's comments? Go on busting with the boys in November, December, maybe even the very beginning of January. Don't bring it to the table in the middle of February as your team is reporting to camp. That's a selfish play. Again, I like Bryce Harper. I like the player. This is wildly off base for what I would expect of a team leader. You don't do this to start camp. You don't. If Dombrowski had said this a week ago, 2 weeks ago, there's been no time to smooth things over. Harper reacts in a negative way because it's kind of just an immediate reaction. There's no filter. That's one thing. You've had months and months to smooth this over. I don't understand how this is still going on. I don't get it at all. If you wanted people to take your side, you didn't have to say anything. I think a lot of Phillies fans would have just been happy to go into the season hating the job Dave Dombrowski did. And then maybe like a month or two into the season, if Bryce Harper has an elite start to the year, then he says, well, hey, I'm glad that I've kind of bounced back to my elite form. And it's passive aggressive. It's probably not the smartest or best thing to say, but you've done something to kind of back it up this year. Can you imagine what happens if Harper doesn't have a good start to the season after all this shit now? Because make no mistake, this is going to be now a storyline that could have died in the fall. This will continue to be a storyline going into the season. It's not going to die now. It's probably not going to die through spring training. And if he struggles in spring training and he struggles to start the regular season, and then everybody comes back to, wow, he really went out, said this before camp, and isn't producing. Now Harper's gone and thrown even more of the spotlight on himself. He's gone out there and kind of, now I don't know, if you want to play like the hockey culture card, is Bryce Harper doing this to try to get some of the heat off of some of the other players on this team? Is he taking strays for the rest of his squad? Is he trying to be a distraction so that Andrew Painter and Justin Crawford and Aiden Miller maybe can all fly under the radar and have positive contributions? And then there's a lot of positivity and there isn't a lot of scrutiny on them. I don't think that's what this is, though. I don't. I think this is just legitimately drama stuff. And I don't like it. I don't get it. Okay. I'm going to go out to the comments. I'm going to see where people are at right now. I want to know if I'm crazy. And I'm going to ask the question out in the comments. Is Bryce Harper right? Like, does he have the right to be offended? Should he still be harboring this months later? My contention is no. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a jackass. It's possible. Wouldn't be the first time in my life I've been a jackass. But I'll even put up a poll. Is Bryce Harper right to be annoyed? Simple yes or no. You guys can vote over on YouTube. If you're on X or you're on Facebook, you got to get over to the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. If you're watching on the Joy Media YouTube channel, which some of you are because I can see you, there's a little screen over here. I can see where people are tuning in from. If you're over on the Joy Media YouTube channel, thank you for being there. You can subscribe over there too, but come on over to the Russ Joy Show channel, and from there, we can engage in a conversation. Okay. We'll get the votes in and we'll see how people are feeling. I think that I think Harper could have been mad about this in the fall and it's fine. You don't bring it to camp right now. Okay. Let's go over to the comments here and see where things are at right now. Okay. OGJH says, oh wow, get to wake up and remember how much I hate what they're doing with the Phils. Raymond Sepper says, it almost seems like the Phillies saw all the reporting and attention the Eagles' turmoil was getting and they decided not to be outdone. Yeah. OG says, after choking out the last 2 years of the playoffs, they don't deserve shit this year. Wow. Woof. Ford says, Harper sounds like a baby. He said it was wild to hear Dave say something about him and not keep it in-house. Oh, poor baby. Do you still want the millions of dollars? I mean, there's a question. Did the check still cash? Did you go run off to see if the check cleared? Because if so, I think you have more than enough that you can kind of wrap yourself up in. You can find enough dollar bills to wrap yourself up and keep warm. There's that old Kanye sketch on one of the early albums where the guy's talking about all his degrees. And he's like, yeah, I might be in debt. I might not have a house. I might not have anything, but you know what I have? You know what keeps me warm at night? That's right, those degrees. All right, let's see. Chris Freed says, how about the Phillies spending 1.8 on an 11-year-old? We can get there, maybe. Yeah, they signed a Venezuelan kid to a pre-contract. $1.8 million. Seems bananagrams. By the way, while Major League Baseball is on the docket right here, Freed says MLBPA is a mess right now with the executive director banging his sister-in-law, hiring her on staff, and being forced to resign because of it. That is one of the wildest stories going on right now. I thought for a second that the whole reason that this guy was stepping down was just because he didn't want to have to mentally or physically prepare for a potential lockout in 2027. No, apparently he was entangled, ensnared in a scandal with his sister-in-law. Woof, that's going to make family reunions and the holidays a lot of fun, isn't it? Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. There's some stuff here about the Flyers. We don't want that right now. Ford says, I now officially dislike the Phillies more than I already did. This is baby bullshit. Video guy Amadeus here says, regardless if Dave had a point, never should have said that to the media. It's the same thing as telling AJ to shut up and Tocchet to shut up. I disagree. You're asked a question about how your team performed. It is fair if these guys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars to say a guy didn't have as good of a season as he wanted or as you would expect him to have. William Gordon over on Facebook says at $30 million a year, he has to be a leader and chill out. It's only one statement. I think that's also correct. Okay. So that's the Bryce Harper of it all right now. Dombrowski and Harper have to get this thing together. You know who really needs to step in here is John Middleton. I mean, for better or worse, that feels like where this is going to need to come from is John Middleton. Now, I have seen some people throw out this idea, and I've seen the radio stations talking about it. And I saw Michael Wilbon on Pardon the Interruption say something to the effect of, I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Harper's traded by the start of the season, which is dumb. That's genuinely dumb. If Bryce Harper really doesn't want to be here, I don't think he'd have shown up to camp. And then I think you have a real concern. But as of right now, I don't think that's in play. I will say, if Harper is upset with the team, that's one thing. Harper being effusive in his praise of the Dodgers pisses me off a wee bit. A little bit. I think Harper would actually be better. If you want to be really petty, what Bryce Harper should probably say, I know Dave Dombrowski's had some really elite off seasons in the past, but I don't think he had an elite off season in terms of rebuilding our roster. That's what Bryce Harper should say. If you really want to stick it to Dave Dombrowski, who you say you don't need to have the motivation from to tell you that you didn't have as great of a season as you wanted to, Bryce Harper should turn right back around and say, I mean, guys, look at our team. Look at our lineup. Look at how we came up short last year. Does anyone objectively believe that we got that much better? Look at what the Dodgers did. They went and signed Kyle Tucker, broke baseball, and are probably going to lead to a lockout. But the Dodgers are actively trying to get better. We had Bo Bichette practically ready for a press conference, and the Mets swooped in and got him on a better deal because their ownership was willing to spend the money because their front office was willing to give Bo Bichette what he and his camp wanted, even if it only ends up being a one-year deal. Dave Dombrowski didn't have an elite offseason. I mean, listen, if this whole thing is going to fall apart, if this somehow becomes an irrevocable situation, if there's been irreparable damage done, well, then I'm here for the petty wars. I hope Bryce Harper gets petty. I think it would be fun. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with that for now. Okay. That's where we're at on Bryce Harper and Dave Dombrowski. Now, I do want to get out to what's happening around the Flyers, what's happening around the Sixers as well. So let's do that. Shall we? Let's shall. I don't know if you saw this or not, but all throughout the season, we have heard the conversation about Matvei Michkov. Is he in shape? Is he out of shape? What will he do during the Olympic break? Because the Russians aren't allowed to play in the Olympics. And there was this thought out there that Matvei Michkov is going to remain in Voorhees. He will be essentially tied to a goal at Skate Zone or the Flyers Training Center. And he's going to stay there. Matvei Michkov, he's going to be like, they're going to put an ankle monitor on him. He's going to be on like Flyers Training Center arrest. He can't leave the building. He can't leave the weight room or the rink. He can only go back and forth. The only food he eats will be provided by the Flyers nutritionists and cooking staff. That's it. He will sleep, eat, breathe, crap, hockey. Hockey, only hockey. Get in shape, boy. That's what the Phillies wanted to say. They're like, you wee little lad. How old is he? 20, 21? Can we call him a boy if he's 20, 21? Maybe not. Young man. We'll go young man. He's technically an adult. Young man, you will remain in the Flyers Training Center. Well, then, we saw Matvei Michkov went over to Instagram, and he didn't tie himself to a goal at Skate Zone. He actually was out and about a little bit. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but Matvei Michkov did end up leaving Voorhees. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but he went to the Dominican Republic. And there were, I believe, some things added to his story over on Instagram at some point, which is where people were taking screenshots of. But then I want you to just check this out real quick. Matvei Michkov, he went to the Dominican Republic. Beautiful country. If you've never gone to the Dominican Republic, you should. Here's Michkov out on the beach. He and his lady friend, a sit-up. Drained it, nailed it. We got a video of him in the weight room. Right? He looks like he had a nice time. But then you have stuff like this. Hold on, let's go back to the working out thing, right? You got this one over here. I don't know who this person is, but this is the kind of comment that I saw all over Facebook and during this break, some of it over on Flyers Twitter as well. A commenter over on Instagram. So much for staying in Philly to work out and get in better shape over the Olympic break. Maybe don't say you're going to do things and then not do them. Meanwhile, you have somebody up here who says, love it, looks awesome. God forbid. God forbid somebody goes away for a little bit and has a little bit of fun. So Michkov apparently was in the gym, was working out, was enjoying the sun, was enjoying the ocean. Apparently he's not allowed to do any of that according to some commenters. Now, if you think for a second that Matvei Michkov was legitimately going to bring an air mattress into Skate Zone, into the training center, and was going to stay there the entire Olympic break, you are out of your freaking mind. You're an insane person. He's not going to, no. He took a vacation. It looks like he worked out, and honestly, I don't care if he did. I'll be honest with you. If he took a week away to clear his head after what has been a very turbulent start to his sophomore season, I'm not going to complain. I do expect now that they're back in at Skate Zone at the training center that he will lock in. And it's probably also worth noting he was one of the first ones back. He might have been the first one back on ice. And if you wanted a little bit of positivity to, rock and roll this week, here's a little bit of positivity. We'll give a shout out to Jordan Hall for the video over at NBC Sports Philly. But here you go. A little Michkov to Zegras action right here. Look at this. Thing of beauty. Beautiful thing. So Michkov's back out on the ice with his teammates, doing what he's supposed to do. All of the non-Olympic players were supposed to be at Skate Zone. And guess what? It appears as though Matvei Michkov was at Skate Zone, a training center. It's not called Skate Zone, the training center. He's back out at the training center, doing exactly what's expected of him. Now, again, if you want to be one of the psychotic people who are upset that he didn't spend every waking moment of his life on the ice there or in the weight room, fine. I think you need help. I do. I think that for any of these players who were not Olympians, if they wanted to get away for a few days, a week, a lot of these guys are going to work out while they're on a trip. That's not going to change. They're going to work out. They're going to try to stay in shape. Because, listen, not a single guy on this team wants to come back into this version of camp, this Olympic break camp, out of shape. Because any player on this team has seen how Rick Tocchet has really harbored this whole thing the entire season with Michkov. Do you think Bobby Brink right now wants to be considered out of shape? Do you think Owen Tippett right now wants to come back and, I don't know, the first week back, second week back, if he doesn't have a good start, have Rick Tocchet say, well, Tippett came into camp in shape, but when he came back for the Olympics, he looked fat. He looked winded. He didn't have the same explosive burst. I don't know what these guys are doing. Nobody wants that. Not a soul wants that. So, Michkov is back. The non-Olympians are back. Probably a good thing for them. Good little mental health break. And now they wait until everybody else returns to town, until everybody else returns. And we're getting to the point now where we're not that far off from the Flyers returning to the ice. In fact, if I remember correctly, is it the 25th is the Flyers' first game back? It's an away game. They've got 2 away games. Yeah, they're back on the 25th. So a week from today, the Flyers are back. They're down in the nation's capital, taking on the Capitals. Then the next night, it's a back-to-back, they are playing up at Madison Square Garden against the Rangers. And then 2 days later, they have a matinee game against the Bruins at Xfinity Mobile Arena. So you're a week away from Flyers hockey resuming. So, of course, now is the right time for all these guys to be back in, get themselves out of whatever they got to experience for the last week. If they went and put their feet in the sand, put their tootsies in the water, sat by a pool, went to God knows where, come back in, lock back in mentally, prepare for your Olympians to return. You only had 3 of them. I mean, technically Rodrigo Apples, and we wish him well in his injury recovery, but 3 that are playing in the Olympics right now are going to come back and have to reacclimate, reassimilate into the roster, and there you go. You have a week. I know that there are people who are probably upset. I see a comment from Amadeo, by the way, over in the comment section. We're not going to pull that up because that's just nasty. Nasty. Amy says, where did that thought about Michkov staying in town start? Just with the media, X? It was the thing that the organization had said. I think Danny Briere even said it pre-game. Was it before the Capitals game or whatever? He threw out the idea previously that Michkov would probably stay in camp or would stay in town. I think a lot of it was also about this offseason that Michkov was going to stay local. But like, again, if a guy wants to go away for a week with his girlfriend, go to the Caribbean, enjoy life, also work out, fine. If he had shown up to this camp late, if he had not been available when Tocchet wants the guys back at the rink, that would be a problem. It does not appear that's the case. All right. Last thing I wanted to get to today. VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, they had themselves a really nice weekend. VJ Edgecombe was part of this newfangled approach to the Rising Stars Challenge where you had multiple mini teams, and he happened to play on Vince Carter's team, and it's fitting because VJ Edgecombe is one of the most exciting dunkers, and there are times where you see a little bit of Vince Carter in his dunks. You see an unbelievable explosive vertical that is reminiscent of Vince Carter. And VJ Edgecombe, in back-to-back games in this like little round-robin tournament, iced the game for his squad. He had one that was a jump shot that beat the buzzer and won it for his team. And then in the final, he had 2 free throws. They essentially called an ISO play for VJ Edgecombe. He got to the hoop. He got fouled. He nailed both free throws. And that hit the target score, and the game was over. So Edgecombe, who's already kind of had some form of a national profile, and we saw a few weeks ago, he and Tyrese Maxey were featured on Slam Magazine. They were cover athletes for Slam, which I think was the first time a Sixer had been on there, I think, since Iverson. Did Embiid end up on there at some point? Maybe he did. But you had the joint cover of Maxey and Edgecombe together. So Edgecombe, with all of the eyes around the league on him and his team, showed out in a really big way for his team and got back-to-back wins with the ball in his hands to ice the game for his squad. And then he ended up getting named MVP of the Rising Stars Challenge, which is very cool. Like, good for VJ Edgecombe. Tyrese Maxey also had like a strong performance in the All-Star game. Perfectly fine job by him. Now, if you want to think about getting back into things, getting acclimated, and you want to think about whether or not you can take the momentum, whatever kind of momentum exists from the All-Star weekend, and you can take that back into the regular season, I'm not sure that this does a ton for Edgecombe or for Maxey. Like, Maxey was already going to be the most important or second most important person on the team anyway, right up there with Joel Embiid. Edgecombe, maybe this gives him a little bit more confidence. Like, one of the things that we've been talking about on the show, especially in the past 2 weeks, the final 2 weeks before the All-Star weekend, was that Edgecombe was going through some of these spurts where he wasn't taking a lot of shots. And I kept saying, like, especially with Paul George out, I would like to see a scenario play out where you get significantly more shots out of VJ Edgecombe. Like, I think that you should pretty comfortably see him at double-digit field goal attempts every game. That, to me, is where I think he ultimately needs to be. And until he gets to that point, I'm going to be not nervous and not worried or whatever, but I am going to kind of question whether or not it's a good call. I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Simple. Now, I'm going to go out to the comments here really quick and see where we're at. Nick Abe says this team should be rested. They signed a few guys. That is true. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I did forget about this. Chris Freed, we can go to this real quick. The Cam Jurgens thing. So Cam Jurgens went down to Colombia. Now it's fitting because I was watching The Night Manager. Night Manager Season 2 takes place largely in Medellin. And I thought it was hilarious. The timing of Night Manager Season 2 coming out and Cam Jurgens being down in Medellin. I want you to just see the stuff that he got done. Let's see. I'm going to mute this just in case. Here we go. This is Cam Jurgens going down to Medellin for what appears to be a multifaceted approach to getting him back to game shape and getting him back to being the guy that the Eagles desperately need him to be. All right, let's just take a gander. Cam Jurgens, Eagles center, who played hurt last year. We knew pretty much from the time he came into camp that he was hurt. Here he is.
Healthy and get ready for this next season. So that's why I'm down here.
All right, so let's see. I mean, they're going to show the highlights of him destroying the opposition. Unfortunately, we didn't see nearly as much of this as we wanted to last year. But he went down. It's interesting. I wonder how much he got compensated for this. But I don't know if that's his knee or what that was. Intradiscal application, cryotherapy. I think he had stem cell stuff, ozone therapy on his blood. The same thing I think that Harper had done. I don't know if it's the same exact thing that Kobe used to have done. But you're talking about a guy who desperately needed serious intervention, I think, physically to get himself back to health. And it's interesting to me that now you have Cam Jurgens doing this. You had the comments by Shady and by Schefter that Lane Johnson's coming back. Cam Jurgens, we haven't really seen or heard much of. I think he posted a video of himself on like TikTok or something running up the stairs and running out front. But like we haven't gotten declarative news that like Landon Dickerson is actively feeling better than he was last season or at the end of last season. So I guess it kind of remains to be seen what that's going to look like. But I got to tell you, seeing Cam Jurgens go all the way down to Colombia to try to get himself back to good physical health, that actually means something. I think it really does. I think it's a good sign for this team. I want to believe that if there's anybody else who really needed to get physically back, like it would be interesting to me. Do we get to a scenario where you start to see Dickerson? Is Dickerson going to pop up down in Colombia at some point? I'm not so sure. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I'm trying to figure out, by the way, there was something else. There was somebody that I was in conversations with, and I'm trying to figure out if this guy's popping on or not. But it's interesting. Oh, here you go. AJ says, I didn't realize anyone else watched The Night Manager. What a good show. 9 years between seasons. 9. Absolute insanity. Night Manager Season 1 came out in 2016. And Season 2 came out about a month ago, less than a month ago, with Tom Hiddleston. We'll just say Tom Hiddleston. There's some pretty interesting twists and turns in that show. Season 2 is very, very good. Ford, talking about Cam Jurgens, says, meanwhile, normal Americans can't even see a primary care physician without a bullshit copay. The American medical system. I don't know if we're going to dive into that on the Russ Joy Show. I'm not sure that that's a great idea for us, to dive into medicine. I don't think we need to. I think that could be bad, very bad if we did that. I will point out, though, I find it fascinating that you see so many professional athletes leaving the U.S. for what they perceive to be the best potential medical care for a professional athlete and for their career ultimately. I think it's absolutely fascinating. You don't often see a version of this where a top athlete says, oh yeah, I went down to Atlanta and I got all these like special treatments. Now, I think we've seen the use of cryotherapy. We've certainly seen the use of the red light therapy, right? Bryce Harper did it not that long ago. I think it's interesting. I think it's notable. But the fact that you have a professional athlete, the center for the Philadelphia Eagles, had to go down to Colombia to get the kind of physical medical treatment that he wanted and needed, I think is interesting. Now, we will be back on Friday here on The Russ Joy Show. Do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified whenever we go live with an episode. If you listen in the podcast feed, you can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. It's been 200 episodes, technically 209, but we'll say 200 just because it sounds nice. 200 episodes of the show. Thank you to all of you, as always, for your support. Don't forget as well, you can find short-form content from the show on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you want to talk some puck tonight, we will be live at 6 o'clock at Chickies and Pete's in Malvern, Pennsylvania. 6 o'clock in Malvern, Chickies and Pete's. We will be joined tonight by two members of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, Alex Bump and Devin Kaplan. They will both be on site at Chickies and Pete's in Malvern. So if you want to come out and talk puck, maybe get a picture with Alex Bump, Devin Kaplan, I'm guessing those guys will be willing to take a picture. So come on out tonight, talk some puck at 6 o'clock. We'll have all of that streaming live on the Snow the Goalie YouTube, Facebook, and X, as well as the WBCB YouTube channel, and we'll be live on the radio as well. So we will also be taking calls tonight. All right. Until Friday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I will talk to each and every one of you on Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.